Tyler Franklin with Axis Seed coming to you from Mechanicsville, Virginia. We've got corn ranging across the state from just being planted all the way to V6. Some people are starting to side dress. We've got a rainy couple days, and I wanted to talk to you about how to examine your corn crop when you're out in the field taking a look at it, how to determine what growth stage it's at, and what to look for. So I want to go over several things that I look for, and I have a corn plant that I grew in a pot. This is Axis 63M73. It was grown in a glass jar, so the roots got some light when they touched the edge of the jar, which is why they're pink. They should all be white. But I just wanted to give you an example of what to look for when you're out in your cornfield. So the first thing I typically look for is planting depth. I'm digging up the seed. At this particular growth stage, you should still be able to find the seed. This is the shoot that first comes out of the ground. But you can see I drew a line where the dirt surface was. This corn was planted about 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches deep. The first leaf fell off, which would be V1. This is the second leaf, V2. This is the third leaf, V3, V4, V5. So this particular plant is at growth stage V5. The other thing you look for is plant height. So a lot of people want to measure to the top leaf. The top leaf on this plant is about 15 inches from the soil surface. But what you actually measure to is the center of the whorl, which is only 10 inches tall. So a lot of chemical labels you have to follow very closely because you don't want to adversely affect your corn crop by spraying it during ear development. There's a lot of sensitivity out there. So it's very important to understand what growth stage your corn is at. So this is 10 inches tall and at V5. Some people might call it V6 and 15 inches tall. So in some cases, depending on how you rate this plant, it would determine what herbicides you can use and what you can't use. This is still a safe growth stage for most herbicides out there, but ear development starts when this leaf right here develops a collar, V6. A lot of herbicides are off-label spraying at V6 or after because that's when the plant is actually starting to determine ear size. So if you look at our roots here, I always say that the main root system is within the leaf span. So you've got roots that come out here just as long as the leaves, but this root right here is not doing any work. The roots that are actually doing work are the little root hairs. So I made a little example for you to talk about fertility. So this is an example of broadcast fertilizer, where your pellets are broadcast across a square foot. So you can see that a lot of pellets and a lot of the fertilizer is not getting used at this particular growth stage. So if a farmer is going to broadcast his fertilizer, I prefer him to put out more up front than they typically would if they were using starter or pop-up or a combination of both. Because you can see the only fertilizer that's actually getting utilized is right here. All of this right here is not being picked up yet. So you actually have to put a higher concentration of broadcast fertilizer compared to what you would if you wanted to run a starter. So pop-up fertilizer is when you put fertilizer in furrow in the seed trench. I drew a line. You can see how efficient that really is. The problem is with pop-up fertilizer, you can't put a lot because you could actually adversely affect germination. You could salt out the seed and cause poor germination. So you're talking 3 to 4 to 5 gallons of a fertilizer that can actually go in furrow. But you can see that it is going to be the first thing that this plant actually picks up. It's a very efficient use of a small amount of fertilizer because every bit of it's going to get absorbed early And so you ensure that this plant has got a lot of fertilizer in its system before it reaches V6. It's a very efficient use of phosphorus because you can put a higher rate of phosphorus right on top of the seed compared to potassium or nitrogen that has a higher salt content. So here's a starter 2x2. So whether you're banding it on the surface or putting it in the ground, if you put it in the ground, it's going to be more efficient because you can see the roots growing at a 45-degree angle. So if you put it 2 inches to the side and 2 inches down below the surface, you're right here in the root zone. And so that plant, when it's reaching V3 and it's running out of energy within that seed and it's living off of what's in the roots, what the roots pick up, you're ensuring yourself that you've already got some fertilizer right there in that root ball. So this is a very efficient use of fertilizer, nitrogen, or whatever you can put in there, because you don't have to worry about the salting as much compared to pop-up fertilizer, which is right on top of the seed. So you can put a higher amount of starter to the side of the plant. A lot of people run the nitrogen here, nitrogen, sulfur. Some people are still using a lot of phosphorus right here, or a blend of both. But you can see that at this particular growth stage, the plant is really utilizing that band of starter. A lot of people here in Virginia are running a starter band on both sides of the row now, but they're putting it on the surface. So you're asking Mother Nature with rainfall to carry that fertilizer into the root zone. So let's say the soil surface is right here and you're putting 2x2 on the surface, dribbling it. It's got to go 4 inches in the ground before it's actually in that root system. If you're able to knife it in the ground and put it 3 or 4 inches deep, 2x2, on both sides of the row, that's probably the most efficient use of fertilizer. Compared to banding it on one side, like right here, in that scenario, only half of the root system is going to be able to utilize it. In this scenario, you're ensuring yourself that the plant is able to get most of the root system in your starter system. So this is another very efficient use of fertilizer, especially in a year where fertilizer prices are really high. We want to try to be as efficient as possible. Now, based on what type of fertilizer program a farmer is running, I will recommend when or what source of fertilizer to side dress. So we're doing a lot of broadcast fertilizer for top dress on corn. Compared to 10 years ago, it was all dribbled. And so you've got your row here, and it's a lot of 30-inch row corn across the state of Virginia. So 30-inch would be over here at the edge of the table. If I'm dribbling it or banding it in the center at this growth stage, my nitrogen is going to be right here. There's going to be very little bit of uptake until water disperses it towards the root system, or the root system actually reaches the center bulk. And some of these roots right here will be in the middle of the bulk, but they're not doing a lot of the work. You're relying on these root hairs to do a lot of the uptake. And it's going to be V7 or V8 before the roots actually get out here and absorb that banded nitrogen in the center. So a lot of people are broadcasting, and that makes sure that some pellets are in the root zone, but some are still out here. So it's going to take it a little while. It's definitely going to take it a while to pick up the banded, and it's going to pick up the broadcast fertilizer a little bit sooner, but it's going to be a less dense form. This is at V5. We like to side dress at V6, again, depending on our pre-plant or planting fertilizer program, but V6 is usually the staple time to side dress corn. So this is probably another week away, but knowing your growth stages are very important. Again, this first leaf right here fell off when I was washing the roots. So it would have been V1, V2, V3, V4, V5. See that little collar right there? When this leaf produces that little collar, we call it V6, and that's the time to side dress. But Understanding how the roots absorb fertilizer, and depending on your type of management and the tools that you have available to use will depend on what the most efficient route is in your fertility program. If you have any questions, give me a call, 804-445-4333. Thank you.